On the France 24 debate this evening, football, French football no less. Anyone looking forward to Paris Saint Germain playing Lyon next month will be disappointed. Clubs are going on strike. A dozen games are postponed, possibly cancelled. Why the strike? Because of an impending super tax. It was a promise the Socialist President François Hollande made during his campaign. Salaries over €1 million a year will be taxed 75%. In reality, their employers will have to pay that money. Football clubs say it's the death of French football. In fact, they just had a meeting with the president. The sports minister seemed satisfied after the meeting.
The meeting took place in a good atmosphere, in an environment that let all the major players in football express their concerns, their worries, and one that allowed them to share with us the responsibility of working this out for the country.
A good atmosphere. Well, that's not quite the way the French football officials saw it.
Despite the possibility of moving forward, for the time being there's been no progress regarding the possibility of a solution. We might even have taken a step backwards.
So is socialism going to kill French football? We'll see about that with our guest this evening. Dan Levy is with us. He's our France 24 sports editor. Football, not professional, but professional in terms of the commentary.
Spend a lot of time thinking about it.
My friend Dan Levy, thanks for being on set with us. Erwan is with us as well. He's a tax lawyer, a business consultant, area of expertise on competitiveness issues. He'll be telling us whether clubs can still be competitive after this super tax kicks in. And Elisabeth, a France 24 regular, is a columnist for the Sunday Telegraph. You've been writing about these tax issues.
Many times.
We'll be hearing about you from you shortly. And Pascal PERRI is with us, an economist, passionate about football, been writing about economic models on European football. He has a book. In French, it says "Ne tirez pas sur le football," which roughly translates in English as "Don't blame football," a book against preconceived ideas on football. Thanks to everyone for being with us. A first question, perhaps to you, Pascal. Are clubs being a little dramatic? They're saying this is the end of French football.
Well, for some of them, probably. I think that some of them could go to the court and face bankruptcy. I'm thinking to what I call the football mid-class, except Paris Saint Germain, that is today supported by the Qatar state with a lot of money, huge amount of money. Put aside also Monaco, that will not pay any tax because they have a special status. But I'm thinking
so that's the football elite, but there's also the football middle class.
Yeah, the mid-class as Saint-Etienne, some, cities that are known all over Europe because they're famous. Rennes, Saint-Etienne, Marseille will pay more than €5 million for some companies that don't make profits. Some of them are just break even. That's really a real trouble. Yeah.
Let's look perhaps at the amount of money that's involved here and the amount of money specifically that the clubs are going to be paying. They say it's some €44 million a year once the tax kicks in. Bear in mind that about 115 players in the French league earn over €1 million a year. That means their clubs will have to pay for them €44 million. And this is how it breaks down. Paris Saint Germain, with the highest paid players, will pay more than half of the total tax, just under half, of the total tax, €20 million. Marseille with €8 million. And then the middle class of French football, as Pascal PERRI has just called them, Lille, Lyon, and Bordeaux, paying each of them several million euros a year. Dan Levy, they say that they're going to have to let go of their best players in order to balance their books.
Well, to be fair to them, that's probably true, because that is already happening in a way and has been happening for several years. Ligue 1 has been a selling league for a long time. We're seeing, of course, Zlatan Ibrahimovic there on the screen, and he is one of the few exceptions. We were talking about PSG just a moment ago, Monaco, who've only recently, in the last few years, because of the enormous amount of investment from their very wealthy backers, been able to bring in and bring back star players, some of them French, to the Ligue 1. But of course, normally the case in French League is that they create really top players and they end up going to places like England or to Spain and to Italy, usually it has to be said, in search of better wages. So I think it is a real problem for French football. Of course, though, the argument is, they can't really be an exception compared to other big businesses in France.
So, Erwan, is in terms of the economic competitiveness of this, clubs are saying we're actually already losing money and we're going to have to pay several million euros more.
Yeah, but it is actually true. As Professor PERRI said, there are many clubs that are kind of PME SMEs, and they are not huge
Which means medium-sized companies.
Yeah, they are not big companies, and they have the same. We have here two issues. The one is a global issue, which is the tax competitiveness in France, and all French companies today are paying too much taxes. We have in France the highest corporate tax rate, that is about 36%, and the government is planning to increase it again.
And we should state for our viewers that this super tax, once it kicks in, will actually apply to several hundred companies in France, about 450 companies, according to the government, for about 1,000 people in France earning more than €1 million a year. So it's not just football.
It's not just football. It's a global issue for all the French companies. Then you have the specific issue for the football business. But I think it's more interesting to see the whole issue, and the whole issue is the French competitiveness. You know, since the year 2000, Germany has lowered its corporate tax by 22 points. France by 4 points, and now it's going to increase it because, as you know, there is this very special tax. And in the budget that is being discussed right now at the parliament, the government is planning to increase again the corporate tax. So we have here a government that is going at the opposite, that all European government have been doing, sorry, in the past 10 years. So it's a global competitiveness issue that is behind this specific football problem.
What I would like to say is that football players playing in France are good tax players.
They're good taxpayers?
Payers, that's right. They are good taxpayers. You know, I have the list here of the French sportsmen who went to Switzerland. There is no football player because all of them pay their tax and rates in France. And if you add the social taxes and the rates, it's every year 685 million euros that are paid by the professional football to the treasury. So, well, they're good tax players.
So they're fulfilling their tax duty.
Yeah, all of them.
And some other sportsmen, you're saying, they just go off to Switzerland and avoid French taxes.
Yeah, I have some names. They're playing tennis. They are cycling.
Go on, then give us the names.
Yeah, they're living outside. But when the company is based in France, you pay your tax in France. So when the government say that it want to eat the rich people, these rich people already pay a lot of taxes.
And Elisabeth, MOUTET, I believe, has written about this, people who leave France to avoid the French tax system.
Many people leave. I might add that football tax players, because they're employees of clubs, they actually don't have much choice. They're not like tennismen who are self-employed. Right. And therefore the tennismen all go. And if you're a really good footballer, what you do is you go to England and you play for Arsenal or Man U or one of the English or Spanish or Italian clubs.
That's right.
And
it's a shame, but it's true.
Anyway, yes, the French are fleeing French taxes because it's just too much. There's a feeling that the French government has gone over the top. In the past 2 years, and when I say 2 years, that means the end of the Sarkozy presidency and mostly the Hollande presidency, there have been 86 new taxes decided by the government, some of which every now and then are being withdrawn or suspended by Monsieur Hollande because there's so much fury that he tries something out, he gets hit by public opinion, and then he takes it back, and then he comes back by the window with a different tax. The general atmosphere is not just that people are being overtaxed, and not just the rich, because Monsieur Hollande campaigned saying, "I hate the rich."
Yeah.
And he said that anybody rich was somebody who was making over 4,500 euros a month, which is not a lot.
One of the defining moments of his campaign was when he said the enemy is finance.
I'll eat
that too.
Finance.
He
this
could
is
have
what he
added
said.
cosmopolitan finance, and we would have known exactly what he meant. But the thing is that now the middle class is being hit.
But Mr. Hollande is also a football fan, might I add.
Are you sure?
I believe so.
Yeah,
Is he?
but, well, if he's really a football fan, why
you're
is he
saying he's
taxing?
not behaving
why
like one.
why
Well,
is
he's
he
also-
taxing so much football,
Well,
soccer?
he
You know,
also has other duties to attend to, such
Well,
as,
I
such as being
have not
president.
seen him at games. I haven't seen him. I mean, you could see that Chirac was a football fan, and when the French team won the World Cup in '98, Chirac kissed the head of the goalkeeper, who's a Belgian, Fabien Barthez, and it was the sort of magic little movement that they did before every game, and he did it after the victory, and it was charming. You could see that he'd been watching the matches, but you don't see anything in it on. But if we go back to taxes in France, it's not just that people feel that they're being overtaxed. It's also that businesses have no visibility. So, because you do not know what the taxes are going to be like. You do not know when they're going to be imposed. You do not know for how long. You do not
This
know what
tax
the
is
condition-
retroactive.
Sorry?
This
Yeah,
tax is
it is.
retroactive.
It is.
And
Well,
that was
it's
the
gonna
key
last
issue
2
today
years.
that they wanted to
Many
talk about,
taxes
wasn't
are
it?
also being made retroactive, although I suspect the French Constitutional Court will have something to say about this, because retroactivity of any bill seems to me completely contrary to the law, but I speak under your
There are huge
your watch.
issues about this, huge question about this issue of retroactivity, because it's something really, it's just good sense. You cannot ask people to pay taxes that they on the money they earn like in the past few years. So
At present, this is what clubs are going to be made to do. They're going to have
They're
to
gonna
pay
have
this
to do
super
this.
tax on the players that they signed last
Exactly.
season and possibly the one
and
before
they're
that.
going to have to pay taxes on contracts they signed with the players sometimes many years ago. So as you said, they don't companies and football clubs are just asking for visibility. Many, as you wrote in your article, many companies are just leaving France because they just want to know how the year is going to end in terms of taxes, in terms of regulation. It's changing all the times. So if you're a businessman, you just need to do something quite basic. It's a business plan or projects for the year. If you cannot do this, even if taxes are low, if they change all the time, you just at a moment
need
you give up.
reliability.
And they're not low. And they're not low.
Yeah, but they are not low. They are very, very high. As I said, we are a high record in Europe, and
In 2014 we will pass Denmark to be the country where public expenditure is the highest percentage of GDP at 57%, which is pretty scary. But take other taxes. Take that tax which is possibly taken back or possibly not taken back on life insurance and savings plans, and that is retroactive to 1997. It is incredible. I don't know whether they picked 1997 out of a hat or because it was the last time that France had a socialist premier, but it really gives a sour impression. What do? You've spent that money. You haven't. It's been gone for long, and suddenly you're told, oh, you earn too much. You didn't pay enough taxes. You've got to pay more taxes on stuff that you made almost 20 years ago. It is surrealistic.
But
I think we've touched on quite an interesting point as well, which is that footballers in France, this isn't true for every country, but in France, they tend to negotiate their contracts net via their agents, which means that they are protected, as opposed to gross, which means that they are protected precisely from this kind of legislative change. And that means, and that is why the burden is falling on the clubs. And so obviously in the public consciousness, the idea is that, look at these greedy footballers, they don't want to pay enough tax, they don't want to pay more money, but they are actually paying a lot of tax. But they are in a way already protected by the nature of their negotiations, which mean that they will pay, or will receive rather, the same amount of money no matter what happens in the legislation. And it's the clubs who are struggling to actually balance the books when these kind of things happen. So it's not just, obviously this whole debate and this whole issue is sort of built upon the very high wages that footballers earn. But it's not about them saying, protesting for sort of more money. They're actually, if they want more money, they leave France usually. That's what happens.
And you're saying that football players or players who play for French clubs negotiate their salaries in terms of net salaries. Is that not the case abroad?
Some of them.
The UK, it tends not to be. I mean, obviously, I'm not a football agent, but it tends to be that way around. The clubs in the UK, and you've had instances of players who've arrived in England thinking that their salary was net, getting their first page slip and saying, hold on, this isn't what I signed up for, and having to renegotiate the contracts after because they were used to doing it the other way around.
So there's actually stability in terms of there's reliability for the players if they negotiate their contract in terms of net salaries. You were talking about how the clubs have to balance their books. They have to have everything has to be foreseeable. The players, everything's foreseeable. They're not to blame here,
really, and not French football players.
And I think
let's listen to the budget minister. This is exactly what he had to say. This is all about French businesses.
The President of the Republic firmly set out the government's wish to implement this tax in such a way that would mean that all French businesses abide by the same tax laws.
And there is a specific economic context to this. This is not coming out of nowhere, these super taxes. François Hollande inherited an economic situation where he had to balance the books of France as well, with massive debt, massive deficit, and he has tried to reduce debt and deficit in the way that the centre-left parties often do here in France, the socialists, by increasing taxes across the board.
Yeah, but, well, the efficiency of this tax will be very weak.
Why?
It will make nothing. You know, some millions of euros. It's just a symbol, you know. Well, the point is that...
It's punitive.
It's a punitive tax, yeah. Well, the problem is that this meeting took place in a very special context. You know, President Hollande had to give up at the beginning of the week against the farmers of Brittany. He had a good news yesterday with the liberation of hostages, so he could not give up with the football players that, you know, represented in France as very rich people. Well, it doesn't matter if they pay a lot of taxes and rates, doesn't matter if they lose money, but the symbol is a symbol, and this is what is it today.
You're saying the government had to stand firm, it had to make a point?
Well, the president, at least.
The president.
And I think there are several points we should make. The first point for anybody who doesn't live in France is we should make the point that in France, say you're a boss, say you're employing somebody and the somebody is going to receive what is nominally known as, say, 1,000 euros. That person will pay payroll taxes so that what they'll see eventually is 780 euros. The boss will have to pay something like 1,700 euros because of all the social levies. So it costs it is very expensive to employ labor in France because you pay for social security, you pay for national health, you pay for a number of things, you pay a special tax on all households, etc. So all of this is very expensive. That's one point. The other point about football, I think, that one should make is they're striking and suddenly the media, and I don't know about France 24, but the French media, French radio, etc., they suddenly tell you that strikes are very dangerous for the economy. People? Strikes are bad. Businesses around the stadiums are going to lose money. You're not supposed to criticize strikers in France except when it's footballers because they're supposed to be rich. And a point has to be made. You really have this feeling that
there's a national consensus against the clubs? Is that
there's a national consensus on anybody who's perceived as being rich.
But this, as we said, you know, this is not about the players. This is about the clubs, and the clubs supposedly belong to fans. So, you know, it is sort of in the fans' interest. You know, fans, the public, in this respect, want to see clubs survive. The problem with football is just that football is subject to enormous wage inflation, and that is partly because of clubs like Paris Saint Germain who can pay pretty much whatever they want. I mean, there are certain rules that they have to kind of, you know, they have to kind of be in alignment with certain financial regulations, and that will be happening more and more with UEFA's financial fair play, which is set to come in soon. But nonetheless, they can kind of pay whatever they like, which is why they have players like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who receives huge wages, but as you were explaining...
Also scoring a lot of goals, by the way.
Scoring a lot of goals, doing very well on the pitch, but doing very well off it as well. But, you know, it's not such a concern for clubs like Paris Saint Germain, but other players will see the kind of wages that are going on at PSG and think, well, either I negotiate a new contract with my club to get close to that, or I go somewhere like England, because you can probably earn what you would earn at a middling English club. You can probably earn a similar salary than the one you might earn at a sort of top-ish French club like Marseille.
Yeah, one of our viewers saying, just when French football was finally taking off, an unjustified tax is going to bring it down. We'll discuss this again in the second part of our debate. We're just taking a short break. We'll be back in just a minute.